The hidden truth about Jehovah's Witnesses that nobody tells you. Jehovah's Witnesses are one of the most enigmatic and debated religious communities in the world, with millions of followers in more than 240 countries. Their impact is undeniable, but what lies behind their beliefs and practices? Why does their doctrine generate such fervor among their followers, while at the same time causing so much reaction among those who have decided to leave the organization? In this video, we will explore the truths that few dare to reveal about Jehovah's Witnesses, from their rigid organizational structure to their strict codes of conduct, including the controversial prohibition of blood transfusions and contentious practice of disfellowshipping. We will uncover aspects that have sparked debates and complaints worldwide. Stay until the end, because what you will discover here may completely change your perception of this religious community. And before we continue, tell me, what do you think about organizations that require the isolation of former members? Leave your comment, and don't forget to subscribe, give this video a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss more content like this. Understanding the community. Jehovah's Witnesses are a community distinguished by their doctrinal firmness and highly structured way of life. Their presence in society does not go unnoticed. They are known for their door-to-door evangelizing efforts, their rejection of blood transfusions, and their apocalyptic worldview. However, few understand the magnitude of their internal structure, the control over their members, and the consequences faced by those who decide to leave the organization. Origins and foundation. To understand the influence of this community, it is essential to know its origins. Jehovah's Witnesses emerged in the late 19th century in the United States under the leadership of Charles Taze Russell, a man deeply interested in interpretation of the Scriptures. Russell established a Bible study group that later evolved into what we now know as Jehovah's Witnesses. From the beginning, their movement was characterized by a vision of Christianity distinct from traditional teachings. They rejected the Trinity, denied the existence of hell as a place of eternal torment, and proclaimed that the end of the world was near. The doctrine of Armageddon. One of the most striking aspects of Jehovah's Witnesses is their belief in the imminence of Armageddon. According to their doctrine, the current world is dominated by Satan, and only Jehovah's faithful followers will survive when the end times arrive. This conviction has shaped the lives of their members for decades. They have predicted the end of the world on multiple occasions, with the most notable dates being 1914, 1925, and 1975. Each time one of these predictions failed, the organization reinterpreted events, claiming that Armageddon had begun invisibly or that a miscalculation had simply been made. The emphasis on the proximity of the end of the world has had a profound impact on the daily lives of Jehovah's Witnesses. The organization discourages its members from making long-term plans outside the community, such as obtaining higher education or accumulating wealth, as the priority must always be the work of evangelization. This mentality has led many to sacrifice personal opportunities, convinced that time in the system of things is limited and that Jehovah will soon establish his kingdom on earth. Rules and regulations. However, beyond their theological beliefs, what has generated the most controversy are their strict rules of conduct and the level of control they exert over their members. The organization, led by a governing body based in Warwick, New York, establishes detailed regulations governing almost every aspect of a Jehovah's Witnesses' life. These rules cover everything from dress codes to permitted entertainment activities. Witnesses are prohibited from celebrating birthdays, Christmas, and other holidays deemed pagan. They must also avoid music, movies, and literature that could be considered immoral or that promote values contrary to those of the organization. Blood transfusion controversy. One of the most sensitive topics is their absolute rejection of blood transfusions. Based on interpretations of Bible verses such as Leviticus 17 verses 10 to 14 and Acts 15 verse 29, Jehovah's Witnesses believe that receiving blood, even in life or death situations, is an act forbidden by God. This has led to multiple cases of preventable deaths, especially at children whose parents refuse to allow transfusions. Although the organization promotes bloodless medical alternatives, the refusal to receive such treatment has been the subject of intense ethical and legal debates in various countries. Disfellowshipping practice. Another aspect that has generated strong criticism is the practice of disfellowshipping, also known as expulsion or shunning. When a Jehovah's Witness violates the organization's rules or voluntarily decides to leave the faith, they are subjected to severe punishment. All contact with them is severed. Members of the community, including close family members and lifelong friends, are prohibited from speaking to them. For many former members, this experience is devastating. Parents stop talking to their children. Siblings ignore each other, and marriages dissolve as a result of this policy. The organization's argument is that this practice is necessary to maintain spiritual purity and protect the community from negative influences. However, psychologists and experts in cults have pointed out that shunning is an extreme form of social control that causes deep emotional trauma for those who experience it. Loneliness, depression, and in some cases, suicide are among the consequences faced by disfellowshipped individuals. Abuse allegations. Over the years, Jehovah's Witnesses have also been the subject of serious allegations regarding the cover-up of abuse within the organization. In various countries, investigations have revealed that cases of child abuse have been handled internally without being reported to the authorities. The organization's internal policy requires the presence of 2 witnesses for an abuse allegation to be considered valid, which in most cases makes it impossible for victims to obtain justice. Education restrictions. Restrictions on higher education are also a topic of debate. Although attending university is not explicitly prohibited, the organization discourages its members from pursuing higher studies. In their publications and speeches, they warn that university education exposes young people to worldly influences and promotes a lifestyle focused on personal success rather than devotion to Jehovah. As a result, many Jehovah's Witnesses limit their education to manual or technical jobs, which can affect their career opportunities and financial independence. Community unity. Despite all these controversies, it is undeniable that Jehovah's Witnesses maintain a united and organized community. Their members find a strong sense of belonging and mutual support within the congregation. They are known for their disciplined work ethic and dedication to evangelization. For them, following the rules established by the governing body is not an imposition, but a demonstration of loyalty and faith.
The question of leaving. The question that then arises is, what leads a person to become a Jehovah's Witness, and what happens when they decide to leave? Many people join the organization in search of spiritual answers, stability, and a sense of purpose in life. However, once inside, they discover that their freedom of thought and decision-making is limited by a highly hierarchical system that does not allow questioning. Leaving the organization is not an easy decision. Most former members face the fear of isolation, the loss of their loved ones, and the difficulty of reintegrating into society after spending years or even their entire lives within the community. Some successfully rebuild their lives, while others remain trapped in a limbo of guilt and confusion. What is clear is that Jehovah's Witnesses are a community that generates both admiration and controversy. For some, they are an example of faith and devotion. For others, they represent an oppressive system that limits individual freedom. But this is just the beginning. There are still many truths to be revealed about this organization and its impact on the lives of millions of people. Organizational structure. Jehovah's Witnesses have built a system based on absolute obedience to the organization. To understand their internal structure, it is essential to analyze how their congregations are organized, how their hierarchy functions, and what role the governing body, the group of men who set the rules for the entire community, plays. The governing body is the highest authority within Jehovah's Witnesses. It is composed of a small number of elders who reside at the world headquarters in Warwick, New York. They present themselves as the only legitimate interpreters of God's will on earth, granting them absolute power over millions of followers worldwide. Every decision they make, every rule they establish, is considered as if it came directly from Jehovah, meaning that any disagreement or criticism is seen as a rebellion against God Himself. Control over members. The organization's control over its members extends to the most intimate aspects of personal life. Not only do they regulate dress, music, and entertainment, but they also oversee the type of friendships believers can have and what kind of information they can consume. One of the strictest rules is to avoid any material critical of the organization. Jehovah's Witnesses are constantly warned about the danger of reading books, watching documentaries, or even listening to testimonies from former members, as they are told that these sources are influenced by Satan and seek to lead them away from the truth. Surveillance and judicial committees. Surveillance within the community is strict. Each congregation has a group of elders who act as overseers, ensuring that all members comply with the rules. If a Jehovah's Witness is caught violating a rule, whether by attending a prohibited celebration, watching an inappropriate movie, or even maintaining friendships outside the organization, they may be summoned to a judicial committee. These committees are composed of a group of elders who interrogate the accused in a private and closed process where the presence of lawyers or external witnesses is not allowed. Depending on the offense committed, penalties may vary. In some cases, the accused is reprimanded and required to show repentance, but if the sin is considered serious or if the person does not display the expected level of remorse, they may be disfellowshipped. The reality of disfellowshipping. Disfellowshipping is, in essence, a total sentence of ostracism. All members of the community, including close family and friends, must cut off all contact with the disfellowshipped individual. This practice has been one of the most criticized in society. Former members often describe disfellowshipping as a form of social death, as they instantly lose their entire support network. There are countless stories of parents who stop talking to their children, siblings who completely ignore each other, and marriages that end in divorce after one spouse is expelled. The organization justifies this measure as a way to protect the community from negative influences and to motivate the disfellowshipped person to repent and return to the faith. However, studies have shown that the psychological impact of this practice can be devastating. Former members have reported symptoms of depression, anxiety, and, in extreme cases, suicidal thoughts due to the feeling of total isolation. Most of them grew up in an environment where they were taught that there is nothing good outside the organization, so when they are expelled, they face an unfamiliar world without the preparation or tools necessary to adapt. Marking practice. In addition to disfellowshipping, Jehovah's Witnesses have another form of social exclusion that is less drastic but equally damaging: marking. When a member is considered a bad influence but has not committed a sin serious enough to be expelled, they are marked within the congregation. Although contact is not completely severed, other members are warned that they should avoid the company of that person and limit their interactions with them. This practice creates an atmosphere of fear and control where members fear being marginalized if they do not behave according to the established rules. Abuse handling policies. Another controversial aspect of the organization is its policy on handling abuse allegations. In several countries, investigations have revealed that Jehovah's Witnesses handle cases of child abuse internally without reporting them to civil authorities. This is due to their two-witness rule, which states that a sin can only be investigated if there are at least 2 eyewitnesses to confirm it. In most cases of abuse, there are no additional witnesses, meaning that many reports go without consequences within the organization. In countries such as Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States, government investigations have been conducted into how the organization handles these cases. In Australia, the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse revealed that Jehovah's Witnesses had documented more than 1,000 cases of abuse over the past 50 years, none of which had been reported to the police. This has led to lawsuits and legal sanctions against the organization, but their stance remains the same. Internal issues should be resolved within the community and not involve worldly entities. Educational restrictions. In addition to these scandals, there are other restrictions within the community that affect the daily lives of Jehovah's Witnesses. One of them is their negative view of higher education. Although they do not outright ban young people from attending university, the organization constantly discourages this option, warning that secular education can lead them away from the faith and expose them to negative influences. They promote the idea that instead of pursuing academic degrees, believers should focus on jobs that allow them more time to preach and serve in the congregation. This has had a significant impact on the job opportunities of Jehovah's Witnesses. Many grow up believing that higher education is unnecessary, which limits their access to better jobs and financial stability. Former members have shared that after leaving the organization, They find themselves in precarious situations because they were never encouraged or prepared to develop a career outside the community. Marriage and family structure. Another important point is the way Jehovah's Witnesses view relationships and marriage. In their doctrine, marriage is a sacred union that should only take place between members of the same faith. Marrying someone outside the organization is discouraged and in some cases may even lead to disfellowshipping if it is considered that the person is prioritizing their personal desires over their loyalty to Jehovah. The rules on marriage and family life are strict. It is taught that the husband is the head of the family and that the wife must submit to his authority, following a hierarchical model based on their interpretation of the Bible. Additionally, divorce is only permitted in cases of adultery. If a person wishes to separate for any other reason, the congregation will pressure them to remain in the marriage, even if there is emotional abuse or irreconcilable incompatibility. Women's roles. Within this structure, the role of women is particularly limited. They are not allowed to hold leadership positions within the congregation, nor can they lead prayers in the presence of men. Although they can participate in evangelizing work and teaching activities, their authority is always subordinate to that of men within the organization. Community image versus reality. Despite these restrictions, Jehovah's Witnesses maintain an image of a strong and united community. For those inside, the congregation represents a safe refuge in a world they consider corrupt and in decline. However, the price of belonging to this group is high: the renunciation of individuality, the restriction of personal freedoms, and the unconditional acceptance of a system that does not allow questioning. But there is still more to discover about the influence of this organization and the stories of those who managed to leave it. The preaching structure. Over the years, Jehovah's Witnesses have built a system based on obedience and strict discipline. For members of the organization, this framework of rules is seen as a way to remain spiritually pure and in harmony with Jehovah's will. However, for those outside or those who have been expelled, these rules may be perceived as a form of control that limits individual freedom and the ability to question. One of the most important pillars of their structure is door-to-door preaching. This method is one of the most characteristic activities of Jehovah's Witnesses and is based on their interpretation of Matthew 24 verse 14, which states, "And this good news of the kingdom will be preached in all the inhabited earth for a witness to all the nations." Following this premise, Jehovah's Witnesses devote a significant amount of their time to visiting homes with the purpose of spreading their message. What few people know is that this activity is not optional. From the moment a person is baptized as a Jehovah's Witness, they are required to actively participate in preaching. Each member must record the time they dedicate to this work and submit monthly reports to the congregation elders. Those who do not meet these expectations may be seen as spiritually weak and in some cases are reprimanded or pressured to increase their commitment to the organization. The burden of preaching. For many followers, preaching is a heavy burden. It is common for them to face rejection, insults, or even threats when knocking on doors, which has a significant psychological impact, especially on children and teenagers who are forced to participate. However, the organization teaches that this sacrifice is necessary to demonstrate loyalty to Jehovah and that any suffering they experience is a test of their faith. The central concept of sacrifice. The concept of sacrifice is central to the doctrine of Jehovah's Witnesses. They are instilled with the idea that they must put Jehovah and the organization above everything, even their own personal aspirations. As a result, many members sacrifice job opportunities, relationships with non-believing family members, and even their health, all in the name of obedience. A clear example of this is the practice of rejecting blood transfusions. As previously mentioned, Jehovah's Witnesses interpret Leviticus 17 verses 10 to 14 and Acts 15 verse 29 as a complete prohibition against the use of blood, even in critical medical situations. This belief has led to thousands of deaths among Jehovah's Witnesses who refuse transfusions. Although the organization promotes alternative treatments, in many cases the lack of blood has been the decisive factor between life and death. Hospitals in some countries have developed special protocols to treat Jehovah's Witness patients without transfusions, but these methods are not always effective in emergency situations. There are testimonies from former members who recount how they were pressured to sign documents rejecting blood transfusions before undergoing surgery.